evening and thank you for joining us. The Ontario Provincial Police is looking for anyone with information after about 50 tombstones were knocked over at a cemetery in Fort Frances. Police say the incident took place sometime between Friday and Thursday of last week. The culprit or culprits caused extensive damage to the tombstones. Some were over 100 years old. The value of the damages is yet to be determined. Anyone with information is asked to contact the OPP. With the Ford government looking to reduce spending all around Ontario, agencies and institutes that rely heavily on provincial grants might be worried about their future funding. But the CEO of the Northern Policy Institute says he isn't worried about falling victim to the budget acts. Charles Sertwell says due to the partnerships they've formed in the past few years, he's confident that the NPI created by the former Liberal government will continue to exist for the long haul.
We've had a long-term strategy around self-sufficiency in any case. We're moving to a point where no single donation represents more than 25% of our budget. We're already with the province down to well below 50%. So we're comfortable that we put a business plan in place that our government supporters are comfortable with, our private contributors are comfortable with, our partners are comfortable with, and we'll just keep going along.
Sertwell made those remarks as the MPI held its 5th anniversary gala this past week. The fundraising event was hoping to bring in between $5,000 and $10,000 on top of a $50,000 donation by RBC. On Monday, residents in municipalities across Ontario will head to the polls to choose their community leaders for the next 4 years. Over the last 2 months, we've met with the candidates, allowing them to lay out their campaigns and speak to the issues affecting their communities. Here's Adam Riley now to recap all the races here in the Northwest.
It's a guarantee on October 23rd there will be some new faces representing residents in several northwestern Ontario communities. In the West, Kenora's Dave Canfield has decided to call it a career, leaving an empty mayor's chair, which one-term councillor Dan Raynard and Kenora resident Lydia Harlos intend to fill. Meanwhile, in Fort Frances, Roy Avis has also retired from municipal politics, paving the road for either Councillor June Call or Councillor Ken Perry to take over. Red Lake has a long list of mayoral contenders consisting of Councillor Sandy Middleton, Councillor Fred Moda, former Councillor Enrive Dale Cozy, and resident Gary Gazankas, who are all looking to succeed longtime Mayor Phil Vanette, who passed away earlier this year. In Dryden, it's incumbent Mayor Greg Wilson defending his seat against Councillor and former Mayor Roger Valley. Sioux Lookout features a three-way race between incumbent Doug Lawrence, former Mayor Dennis Lenny, and local businessman Jason Bailey. Meanwhile, Ignace is another battleground to pay attention to on Monday, with incumbent Lee Kennard battling Councillor Chicky Pisola, former Councillor Nelson Taddeo, and resident Donald Cunningham. Moving into the east, Manitouwadge is also playing host to a 4-person race this election, with incumbent Andy Major fending off against Councillor Peter Ruel, former Mayor John McEachran, and resident Joseph Freitas. Meanwhile, Terrace Bay's Jody Davis is seeking another term in office, but he faces competition from Councillor Gino LeBlanc. It's another 2-person race in Greenstone, and like Dryden and Terrace Bay, it features the incumbent Mayor Renal Beaulieu defending against Councillor Eric Peach. With the departure of Mayor Mark Figliamini to pursue a council seat in Thunder Bay, Scriber will also see a new face in the mayor's chair going forward, with Councillor Dave Hamilton facing off against Dominic Camiso. Similar to Sioux Lookout, Nipissing also has a 3-person race, with longtime Mayor Richard Harvey defending against Councillor Gordon McKenzie and local entrepreneur Barry Lockinen. And finally, in Red Rock, incumbent Mayor Gary Nelson is facing off against returning challenger Ray Rivard. However, there are a few municipalities across the Northwest which will only be electing mayors, as Atikokan, Shunya, and Marathon mayors Dennis Brown, Wendy Landry, and Rick Dumas, along with Dorian Reeve, Ed Chambers, were all acclaimed. Adam Riley, TBT News.
Lakehead University's In Conversation talks have returned to a local library. Earlier today, economics professor Livio Di Matteo spoke at the library on Brodie Street. Dozens packed into the area of the library for Livio Di Matteo's speech on the economy in Thunder Bay. The talk went through the history of the city's economy before amalgamation and even offered his outlook for the future of the city. He sees these talks as a good way to show the public what is being done at the university.
The university, for example, has become a very important participant in both the educational sector here, the research sector, and the economy. So I think it's good for the university to do outreach and have people come out and see what university faculty are doing and, gain the benefit of their insight and expertise.
The next version of Lakehead's In Conversation will be held on November 24th. A local woman has recently released a book that combines her own watercolor paintings with stories from her life. Kathleen Anderson hasn't been painting long, but you wouldn't know that based on her work. Anderson didn't begin painting until after her husband passed away. It was a way for her to cope with the loss. And as she worked on the paintings, she says she felt the need to add further detail, but in the form of words. Her book, titled In Paint and Prose, is her way of expressing her stories.
I wanted to leave behind for my family a flavor of what life was like. And yes, we can say it in words, but if you write it down, it seems to be more permanent. And I wanted to pass that down.
Anderson is currently selling her book personally, but says it will soon be available at various locations throughout the city. For dance and fitness lovers, the only thing better than working up a sweat is working up a sweat for a good cause. Thunder Bay Regional Health Sciences Foundation hosted a Turn Up the Pink Zumbathon, with all the proceeds going back to the Northern Cancer Fund. Zumba instructor Sharon Smith-Baxter says all the money raised will go toward chemo care kits that will be given to all new patients starting chemotherapy.
This year we decided to raise funds for Northern Cancer Fund. One of our very own instructors herself is battling breast cancer. It's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and it was just a perfect fit for us to raise money for the cause.
You can look and you can see how happy everybody is, how much awareness it brings to the entire event, so that they're bringing that awareness that nobody is fighting alone and that there is support there.
While Davis doesn't have a specific fundraising goal in mind, she hopes they're able to make a sizable donation based on the number of participants. Students from Kingsway Park School Academies recently wrapped up their canoe certification training. The kids had a variety of activities in partnership with Confederation College and the Let's Talk Science program. Grade 8 students from Kingsway Park Academy went through a 3-day program to complete their Ontario Recreational Canoeing Certification in flatwater canoeing. Students finished their 3rd session, which included portaging and water studies. Kingsway Principal Darren Lentz says hands-on learning experiences are very important.
There's no walls in the outdoors. It gets them out of the classroom. Stimulation. It's about getting the students outside, getting that real life experience and bringing it back to the classroom to use in different ways.
My favorite part was probably learning how to portage with the canoe, because you got to really do hands-on work and lift it up, and it was so much fun.
The students will also be taking the water samples they collected and conducting further research at Confederation College. EarthCare Thunder Bay recently held its 2nd Neighbor Night, this time on the south side of the city. The event at St. Martin's School was aimed at families in the community to come out, learn about resources nearby, and get to know each other so they have someone close by to call on in case of an emergency. Sustainability Coordinator Amy Combs says even though the weather drove the event inside, quite a few residents still showed up to participate.
Well, we've got more extreme weather events happening all the time, and knowing your neighbors and having somebody you can lean on right next door is so important. We need to know our neighbors in order to build a more resilient neighborhood and in turn a more resilient Thunder Bay. People are starting to, sit down, get to know each other, meet each other. Even if you're a block or two away, you're building that relationship. You have that connection now and have somebody to call on.
The night included a handful of information booths, free food and activities to keep the kids busy while the parents made some new connections in their neighborhood. So Shane, big game in the baseball playoffs.
Yeah, Carmen, was a pretty big game last night. The Milwaukee Brewers trying to force Game 7 against the LA Dodgers. Stick around, we'll have all that and more after the break.